Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
All right, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'm joined by Jody and Jake, both here at Summit CPA, and we are going to talk about choosing vendors and choosing suppliers and choosing people to really help you run your business. So obviously we can help you choose a CPA firm or a CFO company, but we want to talk about what we do and the process we undertake when doing this. And so I can tell you, Jake's probably in the same boat as me, but obviously I was recently in the last couple of years promoted to the director role here at Summit CPA. And once that happened, once that was on my LinkedIn, I probably get 30 emails a day, 30 emails a week, people asking, hey, what are you guys doing for this? Who's your recruiter? Who's this? And so I kind of wanted to get with Jody and Jake here and talk about how we weed out those emails and find all the awesome vendors we do. So I'm gonna start with you, Jody. Just want to kind of talk about your experience with that and how you look at those emails and how you look at those calls and how you choose all the great vendors we have.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, with technology nowadays, email, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. It seems like there's an easy reach for vendors to try to get on your schedule, and so it's really tough to make sure that you keep an open mind, but in the same part you really do your due diligence, because you just don't have time to meet with everybody that wants to sell you something or sell you what they think is going to be the newest and best thing. So with us, it's more of a need. Do we have a need, for a specific product? Is there something that we are currently falling short on that maybe a tool can help out with? Jetpack was a perfect example. We're falling short on process. We looked at what's a vendor out there that we think can really help out and kind of do some research and so forth. And Jetpack was a perfect solution for us. Cashflow Tools was another one. We spent a lot of time, in our processes, putting together a cash flow tool for our clients. A 6 to 8 week, Excel forecast is what it pretty much was. And when we first started off, it was very simple and it had a lot of errors in it. It took a lot of time, and then we made it more complex, which didn't have as many errors in it, but it took a little bit longer. And then if it broke, then it was, how do we get it fixed? That sort of thing. And so we thought, well, what can we find out there that has the perfect solution? Cash flow tools ended up being that solution for us. So it's more of a, hey, do we have a need? And if we have a need, then if it just happens an email crosses my desk, I might take a look at it, or a LinkedIn, or maybe an Instagram, or any kind of social media vendor. I might take a look at that point if there's a need. But if there's really not a need, then I don't typically waste my time and look into the different products out there. I know there's a ton of great products, and every product has probably benefits in some way, but we just don't have the time to evaluate every single one of them, which is important. But the key there is always keep an eye open, right? If something does come across, boy, we should be ready to make a switch pretty quickly, after we vetted it out and determine that it would definitely be of help for us.
And Jake, this is where obviously you've impressed me a lot, because I know Jody talked about the cash flow tool there, but I remember prior to us taking that cash flow tool underway, we just finished an Excel tool that you guys built and spent a lot of time building. And again, we weren't held back by the fact that we just put all that time and energy into building that. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you are able to move so quickly from one tool to another?
Yeah. For me, I really pretty quickly forget about, and maybe this is a good or bad, the time and investment that we've done in, whatever process or tool that we're using. It's more about, is the justification there going forward that's going to have the return on investment. I think we would, I always kind of value the stuff that we have done leading up to that, because it helped flush out a process or flush out a setup that makes moving to the next level a little bit easier, and we've already figured out some things. So if we didn't have that already done, it might have been a little bit tougher to make a transition to like the cash flow tool, for example, that we're using for those meetings. So I usually kind of think about at that point, those are costs that are done, and in the past, I'm not really putting that into the analysis most of the time on if we want to move forward. It's going, in the future, are we going to have the time savings? Are we going to have the cost savings going forward that justifies going through that process again?
So you're saying you're like a good shooting guard. You have a short memory. You always forget that last shot and always think on the next one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I look at the golf analogy being the best. You screw that hole up, you go to the next hole.
Yeah.
You don't build on it. Yeah, for sure.
And even if it's not a screw up, even if it's parred the last hole, I'm still looking to try to do the same or improve upon that for the next hole. So
See, Jamie, he went golf too. Just so
I know. I noticed you guys are talking a different language than me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about my golf game. That's a whole nother podcast.
I can talk about it, so it's a great time.
No, thank you.
But I mean, Jody mentioned, very similar mindset for me with looking at the different applications. It's, at the end of the day, sometimes it's, who you know or who you have connections to. So if someone comes to us from like a referral source or someone that we kind of already know and trust that, hey, you need to check this out, that's always a good starting point that we're definitely going to, spend a little bit of time taking a look at it. The cold emails that come in, most of them end up, passing through the wayside unless, they have something that definitely has already been on the radar, something that we're trying to solve for, or it's on the radar of something that we know that we want to kind of experiment with or test with from like an automation standpoint is like a good example. Always kind of curious about, what the next thing's out there to help automate accounting from like either, using bots or that sort of stuff, machine learning, always kind of curious about blockchain stuff. I think that's going to have an impact in the future on accounting. So, when it's one of those, I'm kind of curious about what it's going to do, or if we have a problem that we're trying to solve right now, then that's when we're kind of, decide on who we want to look at. And that's usually probably the biggest things for me.
And one of the things that I've been doing, because you don't really have to, if you encourage a salesperson at all, they're going to bite on it. So it's kind of a fine line to walk. But one of the things I've been doing is I've actually been using my administrative assistant to keep an eye on those things because, we might not be looking for that service right now, but we might someday. So what I do is I just flag those emails for them to respond to. And I kind of have a canned response that says, hey, thanks for the email. Right now, we're not looking for this, but we might be in the future. That way that I don't have to look back in the emails and be like, oh yeah, now we're looking for someone to help us with our payroll. Let me look back at all the payroll people that have emailed us. Like the good ones will keep in touch with you. And so okay, I just got an email from that and now we are looking for it. So I kind of have that set up as one of my auto things. And once I flag it, they automatically respond to them with a kind of a generic email that goes back to them that, we're not looking for it now, but someday we might be. And so that's been helpful for me. So I know you mentioned this as well, Jody, that you want to keep an eye open for ones that, or keep at least in the back of your mind, things that you might be looking for in the future. What process do you have for that so you don't forget about those vendors?
Yeah, so I don't forget about the vendors. I don't know if it's, Google is just so easy to do some Google searches to find vendors that would work. Or, with as many clients as we have all across different industries, it's pretty simple to reach out to, an event leadership, for instance, and ask for, hey, what kind of software are you using for your subscription-based model, e-commerce, or whatever it might be. It's one of those things that I think we've got a lot of knowledge in the space, or a lot of resources we can tap into to find out what works and what doesn't work. Conferences that we go to, just listening, seeing what everyone else is using. It's pretty much a key sign that, hey, if you go to a conference and you've got, 9 out of the 10 people in the room are using a specific time and billing software and they're using it for the right reason, it might be something to take a look at, that type of thing. Billing software that maybe solves a need. Like if we use bill.com for a lot of our paying bills, that type of thing for US based companies, but it doesn't really work well in Canada. So how what can we use? What are our Canadian friends up there using to solve that same issue? They've got to be using something. They're not just doing bill paying by hand. So hey, just tapping into that network of people that people that you work with to find out what works up there, what works here, what's the best solution to look for. Are there any other solutions? So does something work better? Do you have to do something in conjunction with something else, to make it work? I think you're always looking for that because you're always battling, a couple things. With our industry, you're always looking, hey, what can save time? and what's not going to break down all the time. Those are the big things that I think we look for, because breaking down all the time really causes a lot of internal havoc amongst the team. And if it's taking too much time, then it's not going to be as profitable, right? And so you're trying to reduce things, reduce both of those things. And certain times you got some software that are working perfect for the longest time, and all of a sudden something happens, they do a revamp or whatever, and one of those things falls short, and that's when it's time to either stay with the ship. Do we want to keep with that software and ride it through, or do we want to look for something different that may solve that problem, whether again it's time or issues with the software.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a great tip, and I think that even using your other vendors, oftentimes I feel like this is the type of question we get a lot, is especially because we're so into the industry. When we are working with an agency, they'll say, "Oh, what do your clients use for their pipeline? What are they using to track their pipeline?" I'm able to give that advice, obviously, because we see a lot of different things. But I think using your tools, and I think your point about using a lot of other people, and I think that's why it's important to be in touch with your industry. And I think especially in this area, where the creative agency space, where people are so in touch with each other anyways, like it'd be a shame if you weren't doing that and bouncing off each other. There's a lot of good tools out there for that. So Jake, I'm gonna throw a question to you now. So once you've selected a vendor or found a vendor that you want to talk to, tell me a little bit about that process where you're doing the discovery. What kind of questions do you ask? What kind of things are you looking for? And then do you always bounce off another vendor that you might be looking at, or are you kind of a one and done guy?
It definitely depends on the solution we're solving for. I'd say most of the time we are looking at a couple different options at the same time from a preliminary conversation. And then we're deciding on which one we feel like is going to best solve our need. And then we typically are wanting to do some sort of discovery phase with that vendor, really get in there, test it out, utilize it for, 2-3 clients, kind of incorporate it into our process and see if it's going to solve the need that we're trying to do, or if it's going to improve our process and efficiencies in the way that we are looking for. So those are kind of the biggest things that I'm typically doing when I'm vetting out a vendor and a process, is really trying to get in there and utilize the software pretty early on. Even if that means we're doing a little bit of investment into that platform to start up front. Most of the time, those vendors work with us. They're going to be, I think we obviously have a lot to offer, and we have a pretty good size client base that we're typically wanting to bring onto a platform. So they're motivated from that standpoint too. That's probably the biggest thing, is really getting into that discovery phase and having some help from their support to help get things up and running and testing out, and kind of getting that joint investment to kind of help validate if we want to move forward with them.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, because with that discovery phase, often we'll go into it, maybe it does solve the 2 issues that we're looking for, but then we find out it brings up 3 other issues that we weren't even thinking about, and then we have to look and say, hey, it does solve for these 2 issues, but we created three additional issues. What do we want to do? What's more important to us at that point? Staying with what we already know, or popping into something new, and and solving it again for again another issue type of thing. So I think that discovery period is really almost a requirement, and it doesn't have to be a long discovery period. It can be a month, it can be a month and a half, whatever that might be. The more important that software is to you, I think the longer that discovery period probably needs to be, just to make sure you get all the kinks out of there. But I think the discovery period is essential. When I was asked in another podcast, someone asked me, how long does it take before you solve a problem till we actually have that finished thing? I told them within 4 months, we typically have an issue, we figured out the issue, we've vetted software, and then we've solved or actually moved on from that. Would you say that's an exaggeration, Jake, or do you think that's pretty much in line, or do you think it's shorter or longer than that?
I mean, I'd say it's a pretty good average. I mean, it really depends on what we're looking at. Some things it can be a lot longer than that. Some things it can be quicker. It definitely varies based on the solution that we're looking at. But I think that's a pretty conservative and safe average for sure.
Yeah, I think that sounds right from my end too. And I think the other thing to remember is these are type of things you can negotiate. You know, that the how long of a of trial period are you going to give us? Because a lot of times they'll give you a week, and you're like, okay, that's just not going to cover it.
Right.
Can we get a month? Can we get 2 months? And then the other thing I'd say look for during that discovery period is what kind of support are they going to provide? You know, okay, so during that discovery period, a lot of times they'll say, and you get a representative that you have available 24 hours a day to call and get questions for. And I know one of the new tools that we're using, something called Auto Review, their support has been amazing from day one. And we're actually like asking them questions and having them actually train some of our employees on what the process looks like and taking some of that legwork out that we normally do. They're actually doing for us, and we're watching it to make sure it's how we would do it. But I think there's a lot of things during that discovery period and during those support hours that you can catch upon and really help you out that will make the product even get brought in a little bit easier as well.
Mhm.
So Jody, I'm going to flip the tables on you here a little bit. So obviously you're part of our sales team and you handle all the sales calls. So let's look at this from a different direction and have you talked about when you're talking with someone, how can you tell when someone's prepared to talk to you, and what are the types of things that you expect when someone's interviewing a CPA firm?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, I'm a part of the sales team.
So
I'm
the
not
sales
the
team.
sales
We're
team.
all the
Just so
sales
that
team.
we make that very clear, for sure. When it's kind of we kind of have a unique offer, for us, because with a lot of times when actually the person actually finally reaches out and calls us or contacts us, they've done their due diligence for the most part. They've looked at our website. Our website has everything about us plastered, even our pricing structure. So they know how much we cost, what we offer. Oftentimes they've asked somebody, they've talked to somebody that they know, maybe through a referral, that maybe they heard me speaking or heard Adam speaking or you, Jamie, or Jake, or somebody speaking, or maybe they've been through one of our courses or webinars. So they've got some knowledge on who we are and what we are. So at that point, we very rarely get somebody just simply calls us out of the blue that's never done any due diligence and reaches out and talks to us. But when they do call us, I think it's the big thing is that for me, I just want to hear what their issues are. I don't want to tell them about all about us. They can do a lot of research, and then I'll talk about us a little bit. But I want to find out, hey, are they going to be a really good fit? In that first 30 minutes, I'm just simply asking them questions, finding out what their issues are, what their hot spots are, what are they trying to solve, and then kind of looking backward and saying, hey, can we handle that? Or can we take that from them? If they're coming to us just to do a tax return, for instance, probably not going to be a good fit, and probably wouldn't even quote them at that point. But if they're coming to us to do virtual CFO services, or maybe on the auditing side, if they've done their due diligence, they're looking for like a 401k audit, whatever that might be, they've done some research in it for the most part. And then when we're reaching out with them, the sales call, if you want to call the sales call, is fairly simple, because we're just simply finding out what are their pain points, and then presenting to them how we can actually solve those if we can.
So yeah, the best thing that you said there, I think, is that people come in doing research ahead of time. And so I think if you're looking at it from, okay, I'm getting ready to interview a vendor, doing that research is super important, because like you said, if I hadn't done any research and I called a vendor, I'm going to spend the first 15 minutes of that call just finding out the nuts and bolts, right? And so that's honestly something I can do ahead of time. And so I try to do the same thing when I jump into these calls, is know a little bit about the company so I can get to those parts that are really my pain points and what's going to help me. So Jake, do you want to talk a little bit about the prep you do prior to talking to a vendor?
Oh, yeah, from a high level, you basically just covered it. It's taking a look at their site, how they're, most of my stuff is definitely from like a software perspective and tool perspective. So seeing how they integrate, what things they're currently working with, sometimes kind of taking a look at, what customers they might be working with, if that's applicable. I might also reach out to, we're involved with, accountant community that we run, and, seeing if anyone else inside of theirs is already using the platform, has worked with it, if they have any thoughts on it. So those are probably kind of the biggest things up front that, I'm trying to figure out before I go into a call, to see if it's, and a lot of times that might be even before I schedule the call, some of those things to see if it's going to be worth kind of moving forward. So those are probably the biggest.
And I would think also, one thing you didn't mention is when you do look at and evaluating that software, what is are they going to help through the implementation process? That's a huge thing, especially for us with 130 plus clients that we have. That's a long process if we've got to do it ourselves, especially with a new software that not everybody knows. And we've got, maybe 20 or 30 different people accessing it and trying to teach them how to implement it. That's a big undertaking. And so I think that's a huge evaluation for us is, hey, is, even though this solves, X and Y that we're looking for, A and B, how's our team going to be able to implement this timely? Because you don't want it to drag on for 6 months or 3 months and have half your team on one platform, half your team on another platform, and then it just doesn't work out well. So I think that implementation period, especially when evaluating up front, that's a huge part of it. How involved are they going to be in that setup process?
Yeah, the other thing I like to do prior to jumping on one of those calls is if I can, especially if it's a technology thing, I like to see the interface. And so what I'll try to do is go on YouTube and see if someone can at least spend 5 minutes, even if it's an area that we're not even going to use, but just kind of see what it looks like and see what the how user friendly it is. Because you can tell pretty quickly if you're jumping on the YouTube video and the guy's like, well, first you need to click this button and then you need to right click and do a flip and do all these things to get to this one screen. Okay, I'm not sure that interface is going to work for us. And so that's something I think is really really helpful for me is to actually watch the YouTube of someone walking through a demo on it, because I think that really helps me as well and makes me come prepared into that meeting. Cool. So let's talk about, again, we talked a little bit about using them for that implementation process. Let's talk about is, okay, once you've chosen a vendor and you get that trial period, what's important to do during that trial period, and is how do you go about approaching that trial period? And I'm going to throw this question to you, Jake, because I know you've done a lot of implementations over the last year. So talk about that trial period and the things you're looking for and the things you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, typically I'm trying to run through at least at a minimum 3 client options inside of that application. And how is it going to, either add to or embed into our process, for the solution we're trying to, or for the problem we're trying to solve for. So, that's the biggest. I'm always trying. Also, from that trial period, I'm trying to bring in some other users as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not just my opinion or not just the IT department's opinion, but trying to get CFOs involved, trying to get some accountants involved, kind of have some of those stakeholders of people who are going to be using it on an ongoing basis, making sure that that it's not going to cause more problems for them than it's actually solving. So those are probably the biggest things that we're doing in terms of a trial period.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the implementation team. So I know the couple implementations I've done, I've pulled in different people each time and said, okay, accountant 1, accountant 2, and CFO, do you guys mind being part of implementing this for these 2 or 3 clients? So I think that's a big part of it. And then the other thing, which our clients should be really good at, and I'm not sure they always think about this, is having a project manager. All of our clients have project managers in their team and on their company, but do you use them for these internal projects? I think it's important to have one there just to make sure the project is moving forward, making sure we're hitting our goals, making sure someone's there to communicate, okay, Jake, where are we at with this step? And I think that's something we started within the last year that I think have made our projects be implemented much smoother. Great. So I'm going to take a quick second here to throw our email address out there. So we're always looking for new topics, looking for new guests. So if you guys want to reach out to us, you can email us and we'll answer your questions, or we'll reach out to you and get a hold of you. So that email address is vcfo@summitcpa.net. Again, vcfo@summitcpa.net. So that's an email address to reach out to us. And we're getting pretty close on time here. So I'm going to give each of you guys a chance to kind of throw your final thoughts out there, and then we'll end the show. So I'll start with you, Jody.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I would recommend, a tip that I learned from one of our clients, is that because we're always constantly looking at new vendors and new tools, and you've got to be able to react quickly. I mean, I remember, being on a call that, with Jamie and client, he was using a software that we'd never used before, and it solved a problem. Very next day we're using that software. We've done that a few times, with our project management software, and we also did it with our virtual office with Sococo. Hey, what's a virtual office? Well, here's what a virtual office looks. Oh, that's going to definitely solve the need. Boom, we make that decision and go quickly. So I think there's certain things you've got to make. You got to be able to make a quick decision. You can't just rest on it and relax forever. The softwares typically don't have a huge deposit that you're going to lose right away. It's typically a month to month. Usually it's a subscription base of some sort. So, I guess I would be able to move quickly. The other thing is that, often, we use so many different, we try so many different things. It's not a bad idea having a credit card set aside just for that software that you're testing out all the time. Put it on that credit card. That way, and it's not an out of sight, out of mind, where it's like, a year later, like, oh, I forgot to cancel the subscription for, that software that we just never used, or, something like that. It's not a bad idea. So it kind of keeps you, you're seeing that card all the time. You're seeing it, you can cancel it really quick, and everything's just right there. Not a bad solution there, having a separate card, whether it's a prepaid card where it just runs out after a year, or if it's an actual truly a credit card. Either one would be fine. Again, keeping top of mind all the time.
Great. And take that one step further. I know a couple of our clients had mentioned that to us, that they'll get like a prepaid card that they'll give out for people to set up for trials and whatnot to solve for that problem. Or if they're using a solution like Divvy, you can make those virtual cards for those software providers and only put a 1 month, 1 month balance on there, or 2 month balance on there. So definitely recommend that where applicable. Definitely helps solve those headaches of finding out 6 months later that something's still charging that we're not using.
Sure.
And then I definitely think that, having the investment from, a software application with the onboarding and implementation is definitely a very important thing. I think that's probably my biggest final takeaway, especially, when we're talking about, 40 different people and, 100 plus clients moving on to something. It's just, trying to have that being a responsibility on the team members is going to drag out that process a lot longer than what we want it to be. So having both, having people that are invested in that implementation, both some internally from an IT perspective, but then also with that software application's help, from their implementation team is important to get things up and running quickly. Otherwise you lose buy-in pretty quickly if it's 4 months later and people aren't using it fully.
Yeah, the new car smell wears off pretty quickly, and you want to make sure that people you take advantage of that time when, okay, this is a new tool, this is exciting, versus, oh crap, when is this tool ever going to work for us? So I guess my final thought is kind of to take off what Jody said, is I think that if you're going to have the mentality of we're going to be willing to switch and we're going to be willing to move around and accept these tools as they come up, make sure it's in part of your culture and your team's aware of it. And I think that's helped us a lot. Is when we interview, one of the first things I tell people is, if you're going to work at Summit, you have to love change. You have to be willing to work with change, and you have to get that rush when change happens, because that's the part of our team culture. And if it wasn't, especially in the accounting world where a lot of people don't have that mindset, we would be failing over and over again. So I think we really try to think about that when we're hiring, that we are going to change and we are going to move forward, and we're never going to just sit there and be happy with where we're at. We're always looking for the next best thing. And so we make sure we build that into our culture. And I know we've done a good job with that. So
for sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, I think this has been a great topic. I appreciate both your guys' time, and we'll join again soon. I'm sure we'll love having you on here, Jake. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jamie. See you.
Thank you.
As always.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving virtual CPA success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.